Welcome to today's webinar on career ladders and statements of difference. We're going to make it a quick and fun trip through a pretty dry and very specific topic today. Today's class is really built around what I've encountered over the years with different federal agencies and good things that they're doing that I've learned that I pass on for each subsequent customer, and mistakes that are made. It's also a chance for you to ask questions. And for those of you who have completed the online training dealing with classification, it's a chance for you to even ask questions about the online self-directed courses as well. So enjoy your lunches, breakfasts, whatever you're having, coffee, and I'll talk you through the material the best I can. I will be pausing for questions. And let me go ahead and bring up the this here. There we go. All right. And so I'm hoping that everyone in the viewing audience is a manager, an admin officer, an HR liaison, or a specialist. Anyone joining us that wants to speak up that is not one of those things? Happy to have you, no matter who you are. All right, we're not going to take any breaks. Please mute yourself during the seminar unless you're asking a question. Typical way to ask a question is through the chat. Sean, who's there under the moniker HR Learn Admin, he is going to be the one monitoring for questions. You can either message admin HR Learn directly, or you can message everybody. And then just be respectful, because we get enough grief outside of webinars. We don't need more here. All right, my name is David. And I provide management services, management support to different federal agencies in the area of HR. I'm writing hundreds and hundreds of job descriptions all the time. I think my maximum in a year was I audited 7,000 job descriptions in 1 year. That was my high score. I don't recommend it. And I had to get new glasses afterwards, because looking at that many job descriptions, 4 out of 5 dentists do not recommend that you do that. You can see in my picture last year, me hiking. I like hiking. I've recently discovered that that's my way to avoid building up a giant stomach. That's the only kind of exercise I like is hiking. So my pure belief in coming to the table as an HR consultant is that the federal government can compete for talent. It just has to know how to do it. And today is a little piece to contribute to our ongoing effort to help the government to compete for talent. So today, we want to learn where it's appropriate to design a career ladder for a position and where it's not geographically, but the circumstances. We also want to learn when in the classification process to create a career ladder. So at what point do we do it? Do we do it up front? Do we do it when we post the job, after we hire someone, etc.? Third, we want to be able to design ladders of appropriate length. And then I will talk about accretions. And then finally, we'll address statements of difference. Some people call them statements of differences or different statements of difference. I guess we can arm wrestle for that. All right, any questions before we get into it? Like, does anyone not know what a career ladder is? I can cover that briefly. Career ladder is when you have a job at a certain pay grade. A career ladder, it involves one or several grades lower that give you a chance to perform the work, learn the work. You're compensated a little less, or a lot less in exchange for your inability
Hold on 1 second.
to contribute at the full level. Thank you for muting Coleridge, and welcome. So
thank you.
Ladders are a chance for us to bring someone in not fully ready for the job and to help make them fully ready for the job. It's a win-win for both the candidate and for us as the employer. So when do we use them? I know it says where, but when do we use them? We use them when there are clear distinctions between full performance work and developmental work. If it's harder to distinguish, it's a harder case to make for having a ladder. All right, if you're coming in and doing one thing and it's a pretty easy thing, you can learn it in 3 weeks. I'm just throwing out a number. Don't offer a ladder for that. There's no benefit to you and there's no benefit to the candidate, honestly. All right, we offer ladders when there is a capable mentor. If there's no capable mentor, there's no ladder. You're not going to bring somebody in to, quote, learn the job if there's not somebody there to coach them and teach them. So it doesn't mean mentor needs to be a person. It means that there needs to be a mechanism for teaching the person, not just, take these online classes while you work. Third, where lesser delivery of work does not harm the agency. I remember a federal agency had me come in and do their start to finish recruitment for an HR specialist. They said, oh, yeah, we can train them on the recruiting software we use. So let's recruit them at the lower grade level. They can learn the software and then they'll be proficient later and we can promote them. And I pointed out, I said, look, the reason I'm here as a consultant is no one here knows this software. So I'm here to teach you how to use the software. But when this person comes on, my contract's up. You have nobody up here who knows the software. So don't hire someone in on a ladder to do work on this HR software that no one can train them on. So great, you have a ladder, but you're bringing somebody in who can't learn the work because there's no one to teach the work. All right, next, you can use ladders for blue collar jobs, white collar jobs, doesn't matter. And then finally, you can use the ladders for non-supervisors and non-leads. Now, before I pause for any questions or comments, I want to just say, what I'm teaching is I'm teaching the structure and I'm teaching the most healthy way to do this. So I'm not going to teach you unhealthy ways to do this. So if your organization uses ladders for supervisory and lead jobs, I'm not telling you that you can't do that. I'm just telling you, look at these criteria. You can't really say that supervisory and lead jobs are appropriate for ladders. Why would you come in a developmental capacity to lead other people that are relying on you to lead them? And so same for supervision. How are you supervising me if you don't know what you're doing yet? So I'll pause here. Sean, any questions coming in yet?
Yeah, we just got one. Sharon asked, what do you suggest for creating ladders for small organizations with less paths for growth?
Oh, that's a good question. I wish I had planted that question because then I would have an answer ready. Thanks for asking it, Sharon. Fewer paths for growth. I like the question, and here's why. A lot of organizations are focused very intensely on providing career ladders, so that people will stay in their organization for a long time. And by referencing organizations outside of yours and saying we need to compete with them, and so can we give people ladders for the work? So I just want to be clear that what I'm teaching today is about ladders within a single position and not a career path, which means that you're moving from position to position. In small organizations that don't offer a lot of, what was the verbiage, Sean? They don't offer a lot of
less paths for growth.
Paths for growth. I would say don't try to make your organization more robust than the work allows. And if your organization is doing 12 work and the agency next door is offering 13 positions, that is not, in my opinion, no matter what it costs you, in my opinion, it is not worth it to create ladders to a 13 to do 12 work, even if your HR office will, support you in doing that. So keep the ladders within a position appropriate for the work, looking at the criteria you have here. There's no handouts, but it's not going to upset me if you do a screenshot if you want to remember these criteria. But don't invent ladders for the sake of keeping people in place, and paying them grades higher than the work justifies just so they don't leave. Keeping people from leaving is a goal, and we're going to talk about that shortly, but it shouldn't be the main goal of any career ladder. It should be to allow people to come in and develop. All right, anything else, Sean?
That's it for now.
Great question. Thank you, Sharon. All right, when ladders can be created, there are really 2 times that ladders can be created. And then I call out a little tip. So the best time to create a ladder is when you envision the position and you say, this position is going to be at the 7 level, of course, in consultation with the HR office. So if you're a manager, I'm speaking to you. If you're creating it at the 7, understand based on these criteria whether you want to create a ladder and what it should look like, and then create it when it's classified. When you're posting the job and creating a statement of differences at that time, or a lower grade level PD, it is less desirable. Number one, anytime, I'm saying this as a humble HR person, anytime you go to HR and ask them to look at X and create Y, it's a chance for HR, again, meaning also me, to notice problems with the full performance level job description and say, we're going to need to fix this. And it turns out that this isn't justified. And so your introductory grade is not going to work either, or it's in the wrong series and we need to redo. And it's more complicated if you wait until you're posting the job. All right, and then just my point of information, ladders are created downward but climbed upward. So don't ask HR for a 7. They create the 7 and then say, great, now give me an 11 or 9 and 11 and a 12. Give them the job description that describes the work. Whatever they come up with, that's the top grade. And then you build it down so that someone can climb it up. All right, any questions about this? Each topic is really just a little tidbit, because career ladders is already such a specific topic. I like the simplicity of this topic. Makes it a pleasure to present to you today. Sean, anything?
We do have one. Let me scroll just a second. So the question is, why is a career ladder most appropriate with positions with an FPL 12 lower versus for a position with an FPL of 13 or 14, and in quotes, non-supervisory?
Okay. I think I understand the question. Let me answer the question that I heard, and then I'll check in and see if I got it. So I believe the question is, why are career ladders less appropriate for 13 and 14 level work and more appropriate for 12 and lower? That's what I heard. And this depends on your organization and how you have structured the work. Generally speaking, 13 work requires such a level of expertise. While you can acquire that expertise through developmental levels, some agencies decide that the 13 level is the lowest level of technical expertise that you should just be hired directly into, and it distinguishes fully performing persons from fully performing persons who are also hyper experts in one or more areas, or that train others, or that represent the agency to outside persons. Other agencies might decide that that is what they're going to think about for 14s. Other people decide that that's going to be 11s. That experience for me has been different at each agency. That tells me as their classifier, by the way, we don't classify anything higher than 11 here with a career ladder, and that's their decision. Career ladders are neither required nor prohibited by regulation for anything. So I've also been to places that say we have no guidance on career ladders for anything. Any manager that asks for a 7-level career ladder can have it. Any manager that says they don't want any career ladder, that's fine. And it can be at any grade, from any grade to any grade. Many of you would know that there are some job series that go in 2-grade interval patterns for part of their career progression. I've been to agencies that ignore that. And there are also 1-grade interval jobs that agencies will skip intervals. That's also not illegal. It's just weird, and I don't recommend it. But I don't run these agencies. I'm there to support their HR programs. The person who asked the question, you can pipe up if I didn't answer the whole question. Otherwise, I'll move on.
We do have one more. It's been asked, if the ladders are created downward, does that mean that the ladder top is at the respective position classification?
I think I understand that. Read it again.
Yep. If the ladders are created downward, does that mean the ladder top is at the respective position classification?
I'm going to say yes, if I understand it. So yeah, you classify the top one, and basically, no matter what HR tells you, and if you're HR, you probably already know this, the top one is the important one that should get classified. Some agencies don't even care what the lower ones say at all. So yes, classification at a minimum is applied to the top one. Most agencies also classify the lower ones fully, but we'll talk at the end about a shortcut that some of them allow. I hope I answered that question. If not, I invite someone to speak up.
I do have one more follow-up for you. They're coming in. It's good.
Okay.
So going back to the question regarding career ladders for 12 and lower versus 13 and 14, it's been asked if there's no specific guidance from OPM on the grades, or if OPM leaves that up to the agency.
OPM has no guidance whatsoever on ladders, other than that they're generally good, and you want to give people an opportunity. If you are a security assistant at the 5, 6, 7, you want a ladder that makes sense. And so maybe your security specialists might start at the 7 so that you can not exactly lateral over into it. You would still get a promotion, but maybe you would have a 7, 9, 11 security specialist so that your ladder, A, allows you to develop, and B, trains the people for the specialist role appropriately. And so that you don't get, at a 7 assistant, if you post the job at the 9, starting for the specialist, you run the risk of HR saying, sorry, a year at the 7 as an assistant makes you qualified for the 8. They're not qualified for the 9 as specialist. I'm not telling you that's what I would do, but you run a risk of that. You want your career ladders to reduce risk and be clear and have a business purpose to them. So yeah, OPM does not regulate them. If you came in and had a career ladder from the 4 up to the 15, I mean, good luck to you. And I would like to drink what you're drinking, but no one is going to be able to come in and say you did it wrong, because there's nothing that says what the right way is to do it. You run the risk when you make it too long. You run the risk of having the lowest grade really not even resemble the highest grade, because the work is so accommodated and so carefully supervised, and you're starting with nothing and being an expert by the end. You're really just circumventing merit rules of, competing for higher graded jobs. But that's a decision. That's a business decision that agencies make.
And one final question. Could you please briefly explain what the difference between a career ladder and a career path is?
Sure. Career ladder is one position, and the work for the position is the work of the position. The ladder allows you to learn the work somewhat. You bring some of the skills, some of the knowledge. You have potential to be fully contributing on the job, but you're not there. And so you're coming in at a lower rate of pay to learn, and then you receive the full rate of pay once you have learned and you're contributing. That's the idea of a ladder. A career path means similar to what I said before. If you're coming in as an assistant, even on a ladder, you might come in at the 5 and learn to be at the 6, and then you topped out at the 6. The career path you might say, well, I don't really like security. I mean, I get what it is, but in working in security, I learned what I really do like is job applications, and I want to be an HR specialist. So my career path will take me to apply for a job over in the 203 series or the 201 series to bring me into a different field that I like more. And so a career path is your personal journey from one job to another, whereas a ladder is just one job that you can learn and grow in. All right. The length of a ladder. I referenced this a little earlier. I like one rung to a ladder. One rung is like, you can come in with less and we'll teach you, and that'll help you be fully performing. With more than one, what are you trying to accomplish? Again, we're building downward. You're not building upward. Yeah, we can train you. Two grades down, like what are you doing? You don't have a contributing person. I mean, if you're following what the career ladder is intended to do. You don't have a contributing person 2 grades down because they don't really know anything at all. That's a significant drop in knowledge, skill, ability. 3 down, meaning that you're gonna have a 4 grade ladder. I mean, what is the job at that point? Do you really even need a higher paying, higher contributing person if you can also pay them to be doing almost nothing that needs to be done? I mean, you're going to be supervising them around the clock. So I'm not saying don't have more than one. I'm just saying think about what are you really accomplishing with more than one. All right, keeping an employee longer is a benefit of a ladder, but it's not the reason for a ladder. You do want to hold on to good people as long as you can, but the work is the work. And in federal classification, the pay is based on the work, not on the person. So if the work is X, you're not going to pay them X plus 1. That's the idea of classification. In practice, many positions are graded at X plus 1, plus 2, plus 3, and so forth. I mean, that's just as a practical matter. Any questions about this one, Sean?
I do have a few questions that came in as you were talking. So first, Jeff asks, he understands that people on a ladder don't automatically get promoted, but it does seem to go that way in practice. Is there any insight? Do you have any insights from your experience with that?
All right, thanks for asking that, Jeff. I like the question because your experience with promotions, the non-competitive promotions that accompany a ladder, reflects what the culture is at the agencies where you have worked. Some agencies will swear up and down that you are entitled to your promotions absent any reason to give them. So if you're a poor performer, maybe you don't get promoted. If you if you're not engaged in your work and contributing highly, maybe you don't. But many agencies regard the career ladder as more or less of an entitlement to 1 year promotion, 1 year promotion, 1 year promotion. Where I worked, my first job in the government, that was the culture and the expectation. And as far as I knew, that I was entitled to it. Other agencies will keep you at your introductory grade for a long time and not promote you until there's a real, quote, need. Like, yeah, you're capable of the higher work and we have the budget for the higher work, but we don't have higher work right now. Right now, we have the lower work, and that's what we're going to pay you for. We'll promote you when we have the higher work. And that's totally normal for those agencies, and people don't develop an expectation that it's an entitlement. So I've worked other places that have a very structured peer review process, scientific community and otherwise. I think law enforcement has this from time to time as well, where at 1 year, what you're entitled to is a review by a peer panel or some other process that's very formal to determine whether you have met the requirements for promotion. And so you are entitled to promotion as long as you have met the requirements. And other places really are just like, yeah, you're working out, promotion. So that's entirely informed by what the culture and the regulations are in the agency where you work. Great question.
And one more. Anika asks, they thought that OPM guidance states that career ladders were for positions 12 and below. Wouldn't that align with career ladders being for developmental opportunities versus a grade 13 and above being established for in the career for KSAs?
All right. Would the person mind coming on and asking in person, or Sean, you could maybe repeat it again?
I keep.
Fine. It's actually me.
Hi, Annika.
Hi, how are you?
Is it Anika?
Yes, it's Anika. But
Anika, thanks for asking.
yes,
Could you restate it?
yes. I thought that OPM does give guidance saying that career ladder is for grades that are at a grade 12 or lower. And usually at a grade 13, I wouldn't consider that to be at a developmental stage. I would, expect that someone at that level would already be, knowledgeable and what so have you. So I was wondering, is that just not the case, or is that more recommendation from OPM? But I thought that that was kind of the rule of thumb, that career ladder is for a grade 12 or below.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Anika, and nice to make your acquaintance.
Same here.
All right, look, OPM might have published something somewhere about that. I was brought up to buy into that model as well. Much of what OPM's guidance is tempered by words like usually or expected or typical. And so I would expect that anything that they have written about career ladders would include typical, expected, normal. That's really peppered all throughout their literature and guidance on classification. But over and over again, what OPM does is they say that agencies are there to use these tools the way that they need to. Let me give an example. I worked at a place that asked me to classify a blue collar job, and the blue collar job went from a grade 8 to a grade 10 to a grade 12. And so it was an HVAC repair person, 8, 10, 12. And I said to myself, well, I've never seen a career ladder for blue collar jobs, number one. Number two, there's no 1 grade interval series or 2 grade interval series for blue collar jobs. So I don't know what the expectation is for that. So, and it sounds weird, but I wrote to OPM and said, what is the rule on this? And they wrote back and said, the rule is agencies can develop the career ladders they feel are most appropriate. So if you take that answer and apply it to your question, the answer would be, presumably, build the ladders that you feel are appropriate. And an example from my personal experience would be, if I were going to hire a classifier at the expert level, to be honest and to reflect what my approach is, I'm not going to hire at the 13 equivalent level. I'm going to hire at the 7 equivalent level, and I'm going to want to train them to be the 13. And so for me, I have a business reason why I don't want to hire at the 13, and that's that most experts that I interview are not suitable for my kind of classification. So I'm going to hire at the 7 equivalent and train to be a 13. If managers in an agency have a reason why doing that makes sense for them, then that should be on the table, at least for discussion. All right, I don't want to drag this on too long, and I know it's a crazy little topic, but it's funny that we can explore different facets of it anyway. All right, I want to do a quick treatise on accretions. So accretion means to sort of grow, to augment. So accretions are when I'm in a full performance level, I'm going to make one up. I'm in a full performance level 10 position, and I'm doing my 10 work, and my boss comes to me, or I go to my boss, and we have a discussion, and I say, you know, I've been thinking about it, and I think my 10 work is really 11 work. wave your magic wand and turn me from a 10 into an 11, which is really saying change my position from a 10 to an 11. It's not really me that's the 10. It's the position that's the 10, and I'm in the position. All right, but that's not so important for purposes of this. So accretions are when you non-competitively change the full performance level of a position from a 10 to an 11 or anything more, and there's no change in incumbent. So the person in the job just gets paid more starting next pay period. So as you talk about career ladders, I don't want you to think that adding a rung of the ladder on top of the current top rung is a legit part of the career laddering. It's an accretion. And so my advice to this, I have 5 things on here. Cut it out. Don't do this. It's bad. It's bad for the agency. It's bad for the incumbent to get paid more to do the same work they were already doing. If the position really needs to be abolished at the existing grade and replaced with a new one, you know how to do that. And if agencies have such complicated promotion procedures that it's a real deterrent, the problem is the procedures, not what the top rung of the career ladder is. So cut it out, stop it. I put that in there in 2 different ways. They're synonyms. The really only time that accretions are legit, not the only time, but usually the only time that accretions are legit is a position in the middle of nowhere that has been subject to some actual change in its dynamic. So 3 field offices have closed and you're now doing more complex work that those 3 field offices used to handle. Or the volume has changed, or the kinds of interactions with the public have significantly changed, or you're given new authority to commit the agency to things. Those are reasons to say, you know what, to run a competition for this one person to apply, get interviewed, and then be hired anyway, you're wasting everyone's time, even veterans, even the public. Just make them the 11. That's really the time that, as a HR consultant, I would say, let's not spend a lot of time wondering about this accretion. If the org chart is correctly designed for an organization, it should remain relatively static. And also, an increase or change in duties does not equal promotion. I can't tell you the number of times that a manager has sent in an accretion package and said, well, look, this person is doing so much more and the work is so much harder and they've gotten 4 new duties and we've even given them a direct report. So accrete them. Well, I agree with you that you have done all those things and I agree with you that it's more, but let's let the classification process decide whether it's a higher grade or not. So don't just come to me and say, yeah, we have new duties, so make it bigger. That's not how it should work anyway. All right, it reminds me of the employee, you know, when I was after I had left the government, it was in the private sector. There was a guy, he came in pretty low on the salary to start. So his second year, I gave him a 35% raise. You know, he came in low. So 35% in absolute numbers, it wasn't that much, but percentage wise, like, who does that? Who gives a 35% raise for doing the same work? So he came back at me and said, well, I don't really like your idea of 35%. I was thinking 43%. And I said, based on what? And he says, well, I'm answering the phones. I'm making copies. I'm covering the reception desk when no one's there. I'm collating things. And so this illustrates the last point that you see here on the slide. Just because you increase and change your duties, like you just gave me 4 reasons to not even give you the 35% raise. Those things that you're doing are not deserving of high compensation just because you do them or just because they were added to your job. All right, any questions on accretions, Sean?
Nothing right now.
All right. Oh, good, the numbers. If you didn't know your numbers 1 through 5, just you can screenshot this now to remind yourself how you get there. All right, cool. Now, statements of difference. I love this topic. I don't love that I capitalized the O in statements of difference. So people call them statement of differences or statements of differences. For purposes of our discussion, I just picked one. Statements of difference. These are short and sweet boilerplate documents that say, this is a developmental level for this other job that's at the full performance level 11. To hold this job at the 10, you need to be able to do all the things at the 11 with assistance. All right, and I can give you lots of other language and caveats and sort of make it flowery, but that's basically what a statement of difference is. OPM does not recognize the existence of statements of difference. They take no issue with them. There are no rules about what should or shouldn't be in them, how long they should be, when they're allowed. But you know, they don't give any guidance at all, and officially they don't even exist. So on the minus side, we in HR don't have much to go on what makes a good one. But on the plus side, they can be anything. We in the agencies that we work in can design them any way we want. And that leads me to recommend some features of them. So they are similar to a position description, but much faster to create. They're only for a lower grade level, not for a full performance level. Most agencies use them every other level. So if you have a 3-grade ladder, you would write a job description here and here with a statement of difference here. That being said, there's no rule about it. So you could write a full one here and write this, statements of difference for here. The problem with doing it too much is if you have a union contract that has certain promotion requirements with it, or if you have a litigious employee who says you don't really distinguish between what makes an 11 and what makes a 10. Therefore, I say I'm an 11 and you say I'm a 10, I'm grieving it or whatever. There are reasons why you would not use these, but more often than not, I love to use them. They are fast. Managers like them. It makes the whole process go faster. Don't use them if they're longer than a page. If an agency says we don't use them, then fine, I don't use them. And it is my strong recommendation that managers never be expected to submit them with their initial package, and the HR should just create them quickly, since they know more or less what they're doing. I'm going to show you 2 examples of a statement of difference. Give me just 1 second. I'm going to share. Here's an engineering technician. All right. So the question about statements of difference higher than 12, this shows you at least one agency that I've worked with, which you won't be able to tell what it is because I changed it to be disguised. Here's somebody who had an engineering technician 1314. So if you are in HR or in engineering, you might look at this and go, you can be a technician at the 13 or the 14 or the 13 and 14? The answer is yes, somewhere in the government you can. All it says in here is that it's essentially the same as the full performance level, but you don't work as independently and you don't have as much responsibility. There's lower expectations for you. All right, that's what this one says. All right, that's all a statement of differences is. Some agencies have come to understand that, or come to want more detail or to have more information, and then to list the factor levels that are different and describe them. It's my recommendation that statement of differences is either a quick shortcut that takes you 5 minutes to create, or don't use a statement of differences. If you're not comfortable with this as the entire document underpinning the 13, the lower grade, then just write a whole job description for the 13 and don't pretend like you're going to save time. The only point of the statement of differences is to save time. And longer than this, you're not going to save time. All right, and let me show you the other example, which just gives you something to compare it with. This is a, let's see, that was an engineering tech. Where's the other one? Nabbit. It's a facilities manager. Engineering tech. I'll just share my whole screen. All right. Sean, can you see this one, facilities operations specialist?
We can.
Okay. So this is identical to the language I just showed you for that completely different position in the 1314. It took me 5 minutes, I'm sure, to adapt it for this position, which is a different series, a different pair of grades. It's a different title, and it's exactly the same, except this agency wanted me to include the summary table that is so common in our evaluations. So that's what this format is. The easier that an agency makes the statement of differences, the better. And again, if they end up not being comfortable with statements of difference, don't make a 3-page statement of difference. Just stick with full job descriptions. Any questions on statements of difference before we move ahead?
There weren't any on that. There was a question going back to the last slide, and they wanted to know when would it be appropriate to increase based on increased duties?
The increased duties have to significantly impact the position, not anything else. A common reason for an increase is, oh, hey, Terry Heil, hi. So Terry's been working, I'm making this up. She hasn't never worked for me. Terry's been working for me for 13 years. She's been at the 14 level for the last 6. She is so terrific. I'm not making this part up. She is so terrific. I know she could leave if she wanted, but 13 years, I think she's ready for a 15. That's the number one kind of accretion request I get. Most common. Horrible justification for an accretion. That's not how the government does its positions. I would be paying Terry 15 salary to do 14 work, which Terry would love, but as a manager, I have taken an incorrect action. The next most common thing is, you know what, Terry was handling the work of 2 regions yesterday. And because we're short-staffed and we haven't filled the position in the other 2 regions, we're just going to have her do all 4 regions. So the workload has increased so much. She is so busy and working so hard. That's not, again, how OPM has designed pay grades. Pay grades are not dependent in any way on workload. Workload is non-impactful on your classification, to be blunt about it. So in practice, we use it all the time, but if you want a correct classification from me, don't say Terry's work has doubled and therefore I'm putting her in for promotion. You know, in the private sector, if that's what your rules allow, then yes. But in the government, workload is irrelevant to your pay, which I know sounds weird, but that's how it works. All right. So Terry, if I could give you a 15, I would, but you don't work for me. All right. Good question. All right, we're already at the part where we're thinking again about our learning objectives. Did you learn when it's appropriate to design a career ladder for a position and when it's not? I know it says where. I just didn't want to use when twice. Where it's appropriate. Remember, non-supervisory, non-lead jobs, blue collar and white collar, yes, that's usually where we find it and where I certainly recommend it. Number 2, did we learn when in the classification process to create a career ladder? There are 2 times when I recommend it. First, and more strongly, at time of creating the position, and then to a lesser extent when you're posting the job, if you then decide you want to recruit at a lower level, not when someone's in the position, not after the fact. I don't recommend it. And did we learn how to design ladders of appropriate length? I hope so. Again, one rung below is long enough for most jobs. More than that, okay, just have a business reason for it. I know all kinds of jobs go from the 5 to the 12 or 5 to the 13 or 9 to the 14 or whatever. Just have it match your business objectives and business goals. Remember, avoid accretions, because that's just adding a rung on top of the ladder after the fact when someone's already in the job. It's not usually based on actual accretion. It's usually based on rewarding someone who's been there a long time or criteria which are not impactful on classification, like workload. All right. And then we spend a little bit of time on statements of difference. Keep them short and sweet. If your HR office requires you to make them more complicated than 1 page, then it's not worth the time to figure out whether statements of difference are correct or not, because OPM does not give you any guidance at all. All right, before I get into the home stretch here, Sean, any other lingering questions?
We do have 2 kind of clarifications / questions for you. The first one is a 2-parter. First was, even in the private sector, volume doing the same work doesn't necessitate an increased promotion or accretion unless there's expanded scope and or complexity, generally speaking. And then to piggyback off of that, in that example, if workload is increased, is that when you add an additional position instead?
I like that. Yes, even in the private sector, you're not entitled to more pay just because you have a lot of work. And in fact, in the private sector, a lot of the work is pushed down to the lowest paid people anyway. That's sort of how capitalism works. And the second piece was?
In that example, if the workload does increase, is that when you add an additional position instead of that?
You either add an additional position, I like that, that's correct, or you reallocate the work to other positions that are not this one. So just because, you know, an example is there's 4 identical positions in a work group. This person is running wee all the way home. No, this person is doing the work the best. And as a result, the boss gives this one the work first and most of the time, and when special care and handling are occurring. So this person has the most workload and also the hardest of the workload. Do we accrete this position? Not necessarily. I would prefer that the work be distributed more correctly among the 4. We keep the jobs classified the way they are, and these 3 employees are held to account for their performance. Yada, yada, yada. A lot of people decide it's much easier to just accrete this position and have this one be a lead 8, and these 3 will remain 7s, and that's easier for me. All right, I'm not going to judge you, or am I? No, I'm not going to judge you, but you are not making a healthy decision for the organization. You're making a convenient decision for you and the employee. And by the way, these 3 employees are going to hate this employee for what you did, and it's not going to help the dynamic that I'm sure is already there. Next.
There was just an additional comment there stating that it's important to look at scope and complexity added with the additional duties and workload. Is that correct?
That is correct, right? Those factors tell us what things we're measuring to determine pay grade, not what we think somebody deserves or a position is entitled to. Great questions. All right, thank you, Sean. All right, I want you to look carefully at how happy the people are in the photos that you're seeing on the screen right now, because hashtag, I'm gonna make this up, hashtag, these are actual HR Learn students looking at our actual HR Learn courses. We have beginner and intermediate classification courses available, self-paced, and I would encourage you to check them out. They are of similar approach and content to what you see here, but with a much better voice over them and less gesticulating than what you see here. All right, I want you to also be aware that we do coaching, either standalone or as part of our online courses. We recognize that taking self-directed learning has its limitations, and so coaching is a way to pair synchronous learning with asynchronous learning so that you can get the full experience for yourself. And I gave you a chance to ask questions all along. Any final ones? All right.
That's all.
Then I will stop sharing, and I will thank everyone for giving their time today, not to me, but to yourself, for a chance to learn something new, dwell on a topic that maybe you didn't know that much about, or maybe you knew a lot about it, and I hope you picked up something anyways. And I don't know what the date is for the next one, but I think it'll be in September. So I will wish everyone a happy rest of this month and all of next month, and good health to all. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, everybody.